for sound? Just checking. Okay. I don't even have to talk. I love it. Okay, I think we're going to get ready to start here. So, looks like everything's good there. Just want to make sure sound's okay. All right. So let's begin with our briefing today. We're here outside of our real-time crime center over at the main headquarters at APD. And it's because the focus of today is going to be really public safety. And we do have some important things that we want to touch on with respect to what's happening in public safety right now for the metro area. And so let's begin with our updates from central New Mexico, and then we will deep dive into some public safety topics, especially street racing and commercial burglary. That's what we're going to be talking about this morning. And I also want to mention, too, that we do have a special guest. Our acting commander is here with us, Luke Langwit, who's going to be going into some of the details around this. We also have some visuals that we're going to use, and so hopefully you'll be able to see them on the different platforms that you might be watching. And I want to give folks a heads up just for a little bit of patience. With distancing and everything, we're trying to control the slides from a different room. So if we have to pause and wait a little bit, that's why. Okay, so let's begin by sharing some updates from central New Mexico. Presbyterian site at Balloon Fiesta will open again this Sunday from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. So again, that's going to be available this in the morning on Sunday. Also, an update from our water authority. Some of the easing of COVID-19 restrictions on retail operations and houses of worship, and owners and caretakers are reminded to flush water lines as part of the reopening process. So I think we've all seen this, right? If you haven't used your water in a long time, you turn on the faucet and it comes out brown at first. That's usually just rust in the pipes. So just remember to do that when you go into your business. If you haven't been using the water a lot, go to each sink and make sure and do that. But also, just as if patrons are using it, remember that's just kind of how it always works in Albuquerque. So, also thanks to our team here at City Hall, the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and our partners at the State Department of Health and Presbyterian for helping us set up COVID testing in the International District. So this site will be open Monday, May 18th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Tuesday, May 19th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Cesar Chavez Community Center. So again, that's Albuquerque's Cesar Chavez Community Center. We are going to have the COVID testing available right in the heart of the International District. Both drive-up and walk-ups will be accepted, and it's free, no cost or insurance required. Now, I also want to touch on face masks. You can see here on these slides, I want to remind folks that there's the state's requirement to wear a face covering in public places that goes into effect tomorrow. And again, the state requirement is just some kind of face covering. So it could be a scarf, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a bandana, or it could be one of these wonderful homemade masks. And there are some businesses here we're listing. These are all local businesses that you can get masks from. You can Google them or look them up on Facebook, and you can call them and again find out a way either through the mail or pickup to get some of these very cheap costing, but masks that work great and are homemade by local Burqueños. So check it out. People have been so generous with the masks. So, this was one of our local masks, the one Albuquerque one, and then just got the Metal Mayor edition as well. So anyway, you can also have some fun with your masks too. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about public safety. As folks know, public safety is our top priority. It still is, in addition to keeping people safe and healthy during the time of Corona. But we know that this was a big challenge for our community over the last 5-6 years and continues to be. And so we're continuing to be vigilant when it comes to a number of things with respect to crime. Crime does not stop during the coronavirus, and so neither do we. Our police department has been very active, and we want to highlight a number of areas where we're focusing on efforts on certain trends that we're seeing. And there's really three that we're going to talk about today. So the crimes that are down are things like residential burglary and some other associated crimes like that. That's a good thing. We're going to talk today about some crimes that are unfortunately up, and that has to do with commercial burglary, street racing, which has become an increasing challenge in the metro area, and also we'll talk about the party scene that always returns every summer in Albuquerque, and Corona unfortunately has been no different. And of course, unfortunately, the whole concept of partying is more dangerous now, of course, because of Corona. So we're paying close attention to that. So let me begin by talking about our party intervention team. Now, I want to remind folks, we created with City Council the party intervention team, I think it was last fall. This team is very different than the old version. So I do just want to start out that I remember, because I was in high school when we used to have the party patrol, and the party patrol would kind of line everyone up and cite everyone. That is not what this team does. But what this team does do is break up parties that should not be happening, especially right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that's working. So first, take a look at this slide right here. This is the party intervention team responded to 128 calls since April. And you can see here, they're really happening all over town. I mean, there is a little bit of a higher concentration you can see in the Southeast Heights, and actually around here is sort of younger college folks, et cetera, and then, some in the Southwest. But in general, the party issues, there are some concentrated areas, but it is definitely a citywide issue. Now, our team starts by breaking up the parties before they get violent. And that's really the focus. We just want to disperse those gatherings so that they don't get violent, because we know that has led, obviously, to a lot of the violent crime that happened last year, like with the Sandia High School graduation last year. Again, that was last year. And then small gatherings this year have resulted in 5 offenders charged for murder. So that was over this fiscal year. So we know these can become very dangerous, and that's why this group, number one, breaks them up. Number two, there's some other programs that we try and layer in, including our Rapid Accountability Diversion Program. This is the RAD program, and you might recall we announced a woman named Tanya Covington, who is a longtime advocate and expert in this area. She's been working to set up this program, and now as we get into the summer, we're really going to see how this program is going to provide a diversion for one-time offenders with respect to education, so they can avoid any kind of criminal record. So the party intervention team and the Rapid Accountability Diversion Program really fit closely together, especially when parties become dangerous. Now, our acting commander, Luke Langwit, is going to provide more details on this in just a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about commercial burglary. So these are the statistics for commercial burglary, and I'm going to use this screen to point to. And I want to mention that across the bottom, this is basically by week. And so you can see here, and then the years, this dark color is 2019, that's last year. The lighter color is this year. And you can see that we've had a situation where, in the last, especially in the last week, look at the big jump in commercial burglary. It was nice the week before that. We think this was because of some of our efforts when burglary went up here. We really kind of cracked down, and then that helped, and now it's back up again. We also know that this tends to be semi-organized. So one of the things that our wonderful detectives have been outlining is that we might actively try and sort of catch these folks in process in sort of that old-fashioned way, because we think that actually they're much more sophisticated than people just driving around breaking into a building. And they're taking advantage, of course, of the fact that a lot of these buildings are empty. So we're trying to focus also on those drivers of property crime, and we're continuing to also work on violent crime. So before we move on to our commander, I want to touch on violent crime for a moment. And I want to remind folks, we continue to use the Metro 15 program. This is targeting the drivers of the actual individuals that we believe are driving violent crime. This is in conjunction with our DA's office. We launched this around the beginning of the year, and so far it's been very effective. And so we also have our violent crime reduction unit helping, again, with this burglary initiative, trying to proactively apprehend burglaries in process. That, again, something that we really haven't been doing in the past for a number of reasons. We are now actively trying to do that going forward. Also, our impact teams of detectives are focusing on burglary cases linked by fingerprints. and targeting suspects who are actively committing burglaries. And we're doing this with the DA's office. And so again, this is the notion that these are really folks who are continuing time and time again. The same individuals are now sort of using this as a way to fund everything else they're doing. And so old-fashioned techniques like fingerprinting, we believe, is going to be able to bring some justice in this area. So our goal is to get these drivers of property crime down and off the streets. And to talk more about this, I want to hand it over to Acting Commander Luke Langwood. Commander?
Thank you, Mayor Keller, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke Langwood. I am Acting Commander for APD's Investigative Bureau. Just a quick update on the Party Intervention Team. As the Mayor had mentioned, we launched it on April 4th of 2020. And I'm really optimistic to report that for the 128 calls for service that our officers have responded to, we were able to resolve them without any type of incident. Just to give you an idea of, on average, of what the Party Intervention Team is encountering, on average about maybe 5 to 6 individuals. They may be in a backyard, or they may be in a garage with the garage door opened to where they may have music playing, or they may be talking a little bit louder. Again, it's late at night, so the neighborhoods are quiet, so that's why the call comes in, the call for service comes in. So our Party Intervention teams have been responding. They've been able to recognize that it's a party that may not lead towards violence, and they explain to them why they're out there, and to take it inside and to lower the noise. And they've been very receptive to that, and we haven't had any incidents. Again, recognizing though that the way our calls for service work, our priority system with our calls, when officers that are taking 911 calls, the priority, of course, are in-progress crimes, property crimes, violent crimes. So when those calls come in, they get dispatched to those calls first, whereas a party call or a loud music call, that's a lower priority. So it's nice having a team of dedicated officers, the Party Intervention Team, to be able to take these calls right away to determine if it's going in a good, orderly fashion, or if it's going to be getting out of hand. And unfortunately, we've seen in the past how if there is no response and these parties continue, it could lead towards crime and violence. So it's good to get that immediate response, and that's what our Party Intervention teams are doing. Like the Mayor had mentioned, the Rapid Accountability Diversion Program, we are hoping to launch that this summer. Tanya Covington has been working very hard with Lieutenant Roger Legendre. They both are very versed and experienced with diversion, especially for our youth. So the idea is to not only break up these parties to reduce or eliminate that future shooting, but also educate our youth. We have data to show that our youth are getting more involved with violent crimes, and what we want to do is we want to provide that education and give that intervention to where we point out not only the dangers of using and misusing alcohol or drugs and how that can impact their health, but also how crime and getting into a violent incident, how that can also impact themselves from trying to go to school or get a job, or also if they're hurt or killed, how that's going to impact their family. So we want to deliver that message out there. What I like about the Rapid Accountability Diversion Program, they're looking to also put a community impact panel as part of that program, to where it will have an effect when the police department is explaining the dangers of crime and misusing substances. But when it comes to the gun violence and the crime, it may have a more profound effect when it's coming from a member of our community that can explain to these youth on how their family was impacted because of violence that came out of a party. So the Party Intervention teams in the RAD program, we're looking to really have an impact with helping to reduce violent crime that comes out of the parties. As far as commercial burglaries, I would just like to let the community know that APD, as an entire department, when we come together and have our comp stats, which we call Duke City Stats, we're getting real-time information, and we're meeting regularly to where we are looking at our crime trends. and this helps us determine where best to allocate and deploy our resources. So just to give you an example, this is a map that's showing burglary, commercial burglary hotspots, and we can see the colored areas where we have a red and an orange color. These are areas where if you examine the past several months, it gives us an idea telling us that these are areas where we have had commercial burglaries. And then if you see the blue pinpoints, those are fresh or more recent incidents. So this gives the area commanders and all the division commanders an idea of where we need to deploy our uniformed officers and our detectives to help out in this initiative. With Duke City Stats, you have all of the APD area commanders and all the division area commanders. We see these statistics and we get this data, and together in a collaborative effort, we are determining how best to combat these crimes. So our area commanders are having their uniformed officers come up with proactive operations, or TAC plans as we call them, to where they're going to get this data and they're going to go to these specific areas and do proactive patrol to catch these in-progress burglaries. In addition to that, while we're coordinating this response, I'm in charge of the Violent Crimes Reduction Division, and I have units of detectives that work under me. What we've decided to do, and we've taken this approach with the Metro 15, which, as the mayor had mentioned, has been very successful for us. We're looking at identified repeat burglary offenders. So to do that, we're looking at our crime scene specialists. When they go out and they process a burglary scene, they obtain good forensic evidence, such as fingerprints or DNA and blood. Well, once we get those results, once we get those APHIS results, that tells us who our burglars are. And so what we've done now, in this last week, what we've launched is we're looking at the burglary offenders that already have outstanding warrants, whether they're warrants for burglary or for unrelated crimes. And we're having our impact detectives, they coordinate with our street crimes team that also is part of the Violent Crimes Reduction Division. And they're a proactive team of uniformed officers that are specifically dedicated for violent crime issues or property crime issues. And so we are taking these identified burglars that already have warrants, and we're going to be apprehending them. And the idea is, with them being apprehended on their outstanding warrants, whether they're in jail for 2 days or 2 weeks, that's 2 days or 2 weeks where they're off the streets and they're not committing burglaries anymore. At the same time, since we did get those APHIS results back and we have that confirmation that they have committed this burglary, our detectives are completing those cases, and those cases are being submitted to the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office for prosecution. So they will be held accountable for the cases that we're able to put on them, but just knowing that they're active burglars through the forensic data, we're making proactive efforts to get them off the street so they're not out there committing burglaries. Sir?
Okay, thank you so much, Commander. Now, what we want to share with you is we actually have some pictures and some videos to go over with respect to what's happening right now on our streets. And some of this, I'm going to help out and fix this microphone here a little bit because it's sliding. Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about street racing, and I want to highlight what's happening here. This is also one of these things like commercial burglary where it's not really a surprise that we're having more street racing because the streets are more empty. But it does still create lots and lots of dangers. So this is a new enhanced phenomena that we're seeing that is becoming very problematic across the city. And so we want to share with you sort of what's happening also because street racing often accompanies a large gathering as well. And often some other illicit activity going on. So APD has been conducting some operations throughout the city. You can see here, these are some locations of where we're seeing street racing. And again, this is sort of a valley snapshot. And the darker the red, the more volume. And so you can see here that they're occurring. You know, usually, historically in Albuquerque, we know the common places where street racing happens and has been happening for decades. Whether it's Balloon Fiesta or the end of Eubank, I mean, since I was a kid, these were happening. This is very different, and it's also very dangerous, and that's why we're taking it very seriously. You can see, first off, it's happening in many places throughout the city. And you can see the number of calls here, again, all over town. This is occurring, and we're seeing a situation where what's happening is that there's a mix of alcohol, drugs, and firearms, and racing, and mass gathering. And when you put these things together, they can be very dangerous. So I want to highlight the operation that we conducted last weekend. APD and other agencies combined for 3 felony arrests, 3 DWI arrests, 1 misdemeanor summons for possession of a controlled substance, and 115 traffic citations, and 7 vehicles towed, and 1 firearm recovered. This is a very disturbing pattern. And we tend to see also these events having more and more guns and drugs at them. So again, this has just become sort of a nexus for a lot of challenges that are facing our community coming together all at once. And so we are also seeing a large group of motorists gathering around the city to do this, and there's a high potential for violence and, of course, terrible social distancing. And so I want to highlight the number of cars, and I'll show you a picture of this. We'll talk about this a little bit, but I want to mention first the volume that we're talking about. South Eubank at Gibson, 200 to 300 cars. Atrisco and Central, 250 cars. Broadway and Odelia, 230 cars. These are huge gatherings that should not be happening in the first place, let alone in this context. Now, Central and 3rd in the parking lot at about 14th, so the parking lot on 14th and at Central and 3rd, Montgomery in Wyoming, Washington north of Paseo. This is a picture taken from Air 2. That's our new helicopter that has technology to do this kind of aerial photos. Of course, we are glad we bought that new helicopter and got that in the winter. It's being used heavily right now, especially in situations like this. And so this is a photo of an offender shortly after he fled police. So you can see everyone gathered here, and again, not following any distancing or anything like that. But if we see also, these are civilians that they're very close to as well, who are just walking on the streets. And so we're going to go into that more in a little bit. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. This is a picture when one of these, and again, this is sort of a motorcycle racing version. We see this with cars, but also motorcycles. And in this case, we've seen these motorcycle groups going all over sidewalks, donuts, all sorts of things. You can see here on the sidewalk. You can see they're coming off the sidewalk into the street, right in front of a car there. There's another car there. And again, these are just people going about their business. These guys have been going throughout our city up to 100 miles an hour. Now, and let's actually look at another picture here. So this is an aerial photo of one of the gatherings that I mentioned in terms of the volume of cars that we're seeing. And again, here, this is mixed with firearms, often alcohol. We're getting DWIs out of here. We're doing lots of different levels of citations. Again, with, pedestrian on a bike right there. So this is the kind of thing we're seeing, unfortunately, all over town right now. And let's go ahead and go to the next.
This is the video.
Oh, this is the video. So now let's go ahead and play this video. So we'll just stand by here for a second, see if we can get the video to play. So again, you can see this car here, how fast they're going, where they're going in town. These folks have been clocked at up to 100 miles an hour. Passing traffic right in the bike lane, etc. Again, this is during daylight hours. It's obviously on Central. Here you see him cut into the art lane, obviously, but again at high speeds, cutting in front of traffic. getting at increasingly high speeds there. So again, this is video thanks to our new helicopter we're able to have. We eventually caught this individual, so this is a good thing. And I want to mention too, he had a firearm right here. And so you can see, it's kind of hard to tell if you can see the video, but the firearm's right there. And so we were able to get him again, was also going on sidewalks, waving in and out of the middle of traffic. This is not the only individual. We are seeing this with multiple folks all over town. So we're going to continue to try and do this. We want to remind everyone that these kind of gatherings, they violate a number of laws in the first place, but are also increasingly dangerous. And they're also putting the public in harm's way, any kind of reckless activity like that. And so we're going to continue to follow this. We also know that these groups tend to be loosely organized, whether it's on just connecting with each other via text messaging or through certain social media platforms. So our detectives are at work tracking down exactly who these folks are. And look, we know a lot of people are getting antsy right now, and we know in general, actually, you know, taking your car out for a drive is a good thing to do. I've been spending a lot of time going to East Mountains myself with our kids. Obviously, it is very different than what this is. This is putting all of us at risk. And so it's something we are very focused on. So with that, what I'm going to do is, I think, really transition to questions. And again, our commander is here to further answer questions as well. And want to mention, takeout yesterday was an old favorite, Taco Cabana on the west side. All right, questions from folks?
Okay, we have one from Maida Aguilar at Univision. Can APD touch on the shooting from last night and have the numbers for shootings and violent crimes gone down?
So the question is, can we touch on the shooting last night and have the numbers in violent crime gone down? I'll let our commander field that. In general, though, when something has just happened, of course, there's a lot under investigation. There's not a lot we can share. But also, I think the violent crime numbers are basically the same. They're basically flat. But go ahead, Commander.
Thank you, Dr. Keller. Yes, so our Gun Violence Reduction Unit, GVRU, they did respond to the shooting last night. They are following up on all of the leads, and once we have those leads solidified, I'm sure that we will be able to provide more information on that shooting. And as far as the numbers, I can tell you from our last meeting pertaining to our violence interruption program that we had, compared to the beginning of this year, we are seeing a downward trend in our shootings. We're not quite there compared to last year, but it's definitely going down compared to January or February of this year.
Thank you, Commander. Other questions?
We have one from Kai Porter at GOV. What's your reaction to last night's shooting?
So the question is, what's our reaction to last night's shooting? And, you know, for me, first, we can share that we believe everyone is going to survive. So, you know, that's obviously a good thing. But this kind of thing is a very big challenge for our city. We know that we've had these group disputes, collections of folks who then turn violent with respect to a firearm. And so this is something we never want to see. And it's something that we have to remind folks we have to continue to do everything we can to stop, because it takes everything we've got to limit these kinds of things that happen. But I also know that in these times, we are continually worried about areas that are densely populated, about the stresses that are occurring, especially in folks who are already in a fragile situation with respect to either income or addiction. And so this is something that we hope there just isn't many more examples of this, but very tragic nonetheless. Anything else you want to add? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, we don't have any other questions from Zoom.
Okay. Well, I think with that, we're going to wrap up. I want to wish everyone the best on, reopening Phase 1 weekend in the Duke City. Want to remind folks, if you can, please stay at home. Remind folks to wear a face mask in public. And also want everyone to stay safe and healthy. We know that Phase 1 reopening is something that we have earned by our actions in terms of social distancing and all of the COVID-safe practices. We also know that staying in Phase 1 and progressing further means that we have to continue to do our part. And so let's all try and demonstrate that this weekend. Thanks so much.